Wanted to do another video today. This one I wanted to touch on a little bit about the Book of Shadows. Everybody is talking about their Book of Shadows. They're about that they have to get back into it, or they G Direct's doing a wonderful thing with the prompts to get people journaling about a particular idea. I really like that. I don't want to participate in someone else's prompts because I kind of go by the seat of my pants of what I need to focus on for myself. But I really like the general idea of doing that and getting back in the habit of journaling. And the reason why I think that's so important when people talk about a Book of Shadows, in the olden days, it seemed like the Book of Shadows had more about your information, more about the cycles of the moon, more about what this herb does, what this herb looks like. If you looked at a lot of the examples that they have of more ancient texts from people, like ancient grimoires or books of shadows, and you look at them, you could often see that these books looked more like encyclopedia of herbs or astrological movements, almost like a science book at times. All the different correspondences that they would write down. And of course, in there, they would have spells, directions on how to perform the spell to get the peak things. They would have journaling in between there and everything. But back in the olden days, so many, even not that long ago, say even 50 years to 75 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of books to gather a whole lot of information. So you had to write it down. Everything that you did learn, every bit of information that you observed, everything had to go in that Book of Shadows because you were really writing the books. You were writing your reference material. You were writing a journal of events. You were writing that science. It is a science experiment book as well, because you're doing an experiment. That would be the spell work, and then you're observing how well it played out and what transpired after you did that spell work and how successful it was. Performing the spell at different times of the year, different times of the moon, different times, and then watching which one was more successful. Learning a new herb, trying to identify an herb, where, all these different things were in the books. But to me today, with so much information available to us, I have a huge library. The library I have just in my magic room here is primarily just the books that pertain to magic and correspondences, and so I use those books as my reference. I don't feel the need to write all of that down in a single Book of Shadows, since I have the books and I know where to go to reference the material if I need additional information, or if I need a reminder, or if I need something that I'm working, that I don't work all the time, to make sure I get the correspondences right. So I think now, to me, and this is only for me because there's no right or wrong with anyone's Book of Shadows or grimoire. It's what you need, and it's what you want to put in it. And so now people have mixed media books, they have art journals, journal books, they have, just really like a diary. It's really a record of what you've done, what work you've put through, your observations about what happened after you've done the work, how you were feeling. So I find that the Book of Shadows is more of a personal journal and a timestamp of a lot of elements coming together, as every time you do some spell work, you can see the patterns of your thoughts leading up to the spell work, and your patterns, how anything might have shifted or not shifted after you've done the spell work, and how you were feeling after the spell work, and any observations that you have made. And then when you go back with an objective eye and reread events leading up to the spell and events after, your journaling can really tell you a lot more than just the spell you put down on paper and what you did with it, but to understand this one was a really successful spell. But you look back in the week or so before the spell, where your mind was, how focused you were you focusing in on what you were going to do in this spell, were you formulating the spell, or did you just pull it from a book, slap it down on paper after a week and a half of being angry or wild or this or that, or depressed, or maybe you were joyfully happy about something, because your emotions have a lot to do with how successful that magic's going to be. And sometimes we don't even realize that the reason for that ritual bath and the reason for going through a lot of the motions of creating the ceremony, that of the ritual, the actual ritualized components of the ritual, and that they're supposed to be taking you out of space and time. And then as you do your work or you perform whatever you're going to be performing, how you come out of that, how do you come out of circle, how were your emotions afterwards, the week or so after the spell work, those are all real telltale signs for you. Say your spell was a complete flop, it didn't give you the results that you wanted. Well, as you go back and you review, you can see what things may have been affecting the spell. You can also see what made it a successful spell. Or maybe it was a spell that you meant to do one thing, it did something else, not necessarily negative or positive, but you could see the cause and effect of the energy that you moved. But maybe you moved it in a total way that you didn't expect in any way, shape, or form. But by reviewing that week or so ahead of the spell and after the spell, you can kind of see the patterns and how you still influenced it the way that it did come out. And that way you can get better control of your workings. And I think that is very, very important. It does several things. It builds confidence in a new witch. The witch that's still learning But I think everyone should be still learning. I don't think you're ever going to learn it all. I think that there is always something more, a deeper meaning. You know, for everything that you understand, now you have to go down to the next level on it. And it keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. So although you may have a great grasp on everything, I think the years just take you into deeper and deeper and deeper knowledge and more aspects of learning your craft. I don't think you ever stop learning your craft. But when you're at the beginning, and you're starting out, and it doesn't matter how much you believe or don't believe. Sometimes you don't have faith in your own ability, and you're really book smart, but in practical terms, maybe you're not applying it. It takes a while to really start fully applying everything and applying things in a way that is applied with wisdom. Versus just the knowing how to do something. And you can see your growth, but the biggest thing that I think you see in the beginning is you grow your confidence. And confidence is everything, because the more shaky you are, the more doubtful you are, the weaker your magic is. When you start getting and seeing direct cause and effect from what you've been doing, and your confidence starts to grow and magnify, you also see that your power grows and magnifies, and your results become more and more obtainable, but also more clearly focused and driven. And so the young witch, the new witch, the ones starting out on their paths in the first several years, that's what journaling or the Book of Shadows, whatever you want to call it, because it really doesn't matter. You can have mini books too. You can have your journal. That is your companion to your Book of Shadows as well too. There's lots of people who do that, where they continue to journal and they have all of that, but then their spell work and correspondences and all their information type stuff is in their Book of Shadows. And that's a very good way to do it. But if you wanted to make your Book of Shadows more like a journal, that's perfectly acceptable too. I mean, there's no right or wrong how you want to chronicle your magical life. And but when you're an intermediate witch, when you know a lot, but you still have a lot more to go, but you can no longer call yourself a beginner. You've gained your confidence, you've gained your skill, but now maybe you are working on skills that you may not be as proficient at, because we all have things that we're more natural at, that come easy, that we're really comfortable with. And so I think the intermediate witch starts working on the things that they're not so good at, that they don't come natural at, that they and maybe it's not that they're not good at it. Maybe it's just because at first there's so much to learn. You can't be an expert at everything right off the bat. A lot of times it's just because of lack of time to be able to study that next subject. Like tarot cards, that can be a lifetime of study, just a tarot deck. And that's not even attempting to change to 15 different kinds of tarot decks or more. A lot of people have collections, and I understand their collections are more because they just really love the cards, they love the artwork, And believe me, if I had the space, there's many of them that I would probably collect. But I find that with my tarot decks, I really like the three. I have a clear-cut one, the Rider-Waite. It's the best learning deck. It's the best one to teach with. There's so much work out there that uses that particular card deck as a base to really get all of the symbolism and all those meanings, archetypes, everything. It's all there. The art decks, which are considered the spin-off tarot decks, they're still tarot decks, and I think that anybody that has an affinity to any deck should pick the one that they have an affinity to. Like I said, I picked my first deck, and it was more of a French or an Italian Renaissance kind of, I think it's the Scalapini. My deck is so old that I don't even have the easy access to the little booklet that came with it in the very beginning, so many years ago. I think it's the Scalapini. I think his name is something like that. That one spoke to me. That's the one I wanted. That's the one I liked. And when I was studying the card deck, it basically had all of the imagery there. There was a little bit of difference, but when you looked at the card, it evoked the feeling. And I learned early on, if the card invokes that emotion, if that symbolism is speaking to you, and if you write down, say you pick any card deck, any card of the tarot, and you pull that card in the one that speaks to you, and if you write down everything that card says to you, what you feel when you see that card, and then you compare it to what it should be with the Rider-Waite deck, if you can see that the themes that run through there are consistent with one another, even though they don't have to be entirely the same, because tarot is supposed to be there to awaken the mind and the spirit, and it is a focal point so that you can hear basically you're pulling in from the other world. You're getting your answers not from really the cards themselves. So there can be differences and stuff like that, but if you have the nuance of the card is the same, then you're really, in my opinion, it's a tarot deck, and it flows, and it tells a story. It's speaking to you. It sets off whatever it is that comes through to give you the messages that you need to see in the cards, to give the story to the person that you're reading for. Then it's a good deck. It's a great deck. What will be a great deck for me won't be a great deck for the next person, because we all have our preferences, our nuances and stuff, things that will trigger different things in the brain. And so I think that we should all just pick the deck that really speaks to us. But I think if you're learning and you haven't learned to open to all of that, because that takes skill, that takes time, patience to learn to trust those things coming to you like that, to speak them out loud. I think that comes with a more skilled card reader than in the very beginning. I think you should really start with one that you can really get a grasp on the basic symbolism in the cards and stuff, the colors, the feel, if there's people in the card or not people in the card, or the people isolated on the card, are they surrounded by other people in the card, that kind of thing. Is the card got a feel of trouble, turbulence, or that kind of thing, or does it have a calming effect on you of like Temperance in the Star card, where it has more of a happiness or a joy to the card? All of those things play in, and you need that basic thing. Because if you're going to be reading cards for people at and say you're actually taking money for this, and you have set appointments and stuff like that, there'll be days when Spirit is not as clear to you. And although that's the best readings, is when Spirit is coming through and the message is just flowing and the cards are bringing up the messages, but yet it's coming from Spirit and you're on target. Those are great days. But we are human, and there are energy tides that are at play at all times in the universe, and sometimes things are quieter and you don't get all that easy flow from Spirit, and that's when you're there with the cards. That's the importance of having those basics down and understanding the fundamental symbolism on the card itself and how they interplay with the cards around them, so that you can tell that story for that client and keep going. So I think it's very important that you have the fundamentals down, and I think that the Rider-Waite deck is the best way to do that and to get that foundation in. And once you have that foundation, if it's a card deck that you can easily transfer that information and make it blend to the deck that you're using, I think that you're much better off for those times when Spirit is a little quieter, or maybe you're just having more trouble hearing it, maybe you're a little bit more distracted, maybe the energy is really off, maybe we're being affected by solar flares, or who knows what else could be messing with the energy flow. It can be all kinds of things, and I think those are the better ways and things to do. But I was drawn to start doing the Oracle decks so that I could do that journaling, and I think that these are going to be better cues for me for the journaling, using these cards, because I think that I'll get back into my daily journals for my Book of Shadows, and I do believe that that is really, really important. It really shows you a chronological step-by-step thing that you did to prepare yourself, even when you don't even think that you're preparing yourself for anything. If I'm going to do a major spell work, like new moon's coming up, if there's something that I was planning on doing, I would already be thinking about it. I'd be thinking about it. I'd be saying, okay, I'd be starting to write my spell. I'd be doing my correspondences. I'd be making sure, what herb is correlated to Mars. If it's the astrological sign of something, I'd be looking for a water element or an air element, or, you know, I'm looking for all those correspondences depending on the planets that I'm going to use, the time of day I have to do the operation, the day of the week that it is, well, I know what my moon phase is because it would be dark moon. I actually don't do spell work on dark moon generally. I do spell work on new moon when it's already starting to go over to that side, so it's starting to pick up speed and go forward. And if I'm doing all of that, I'm already starting to write all that down. I'm making sure that, okay, now maybe I have all my planets and all the things that I'm going to have written in my spell. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to go look for those herbs to correspond. But all that prep work that I do beforehand, if I'm journaling, I'm actually taking myself through all of that. But in my journaling, I'm also talking about how this customer over here irritated me, or this one was so sweet, or I helped this one do this, or my mom and dad were sick this week, or my grandbaby came to visit me and I was ecstatically thrilled. And all of those things, those are the subtle nuances that are also going into your spell. That everyday life is going in there too. So if the energy is all positive, it's great. But if the energy is less than great, then it's affecting you as well too. And you might have to take extra efforts to shake that off before you walk into that circle to perform that spell work. So that's what I like about what Jude is doing. She got me to, my schedule doesn't work to say, okay, we're going to do a prompt on Thursday about what it is. I think it's wonderful if I had a more normalized schedule, but I don't. But she put the idea and placed it in my head. So that was great, and I still want to thank her for that. Even though I'm not participating in the thing you're doing, I really think it's a wonderful thing. But when these oracle cards came, it's showing me how in picking these cards, and it doesn't even matter if I stick with the same deck, I don't think. I think it's whichever one I'm drawn to pull that day, depending on, what I'm going through, what the energy is. And then pulling that and just writing a short essay on it. What my feelings and thoughts are on that. I think that would be a very interesting journal unto itself. And like I said, very much like what Jude Direct is doing. It's just that this would fit more into my lifestyle, because I'm not stressing if there's a day that I can't do it, or if it takes me 2 days of contemplation on the card, I can take 2 days of contemplation and write a longer essay. Or if it's just maybe only 6-7 sentences, if I just get the essence out of what I'm feeling about that. I think at the end of about a year's time doing that, there would be some very interesting reading to go back to and correspond it to spell work that you've done, or to other things, other events. And if you're not taking mental note of what phase the moon is in, or say there was a lot of fighting going on and then you looked at Mars was in conflict with something, or in your chart or something like that, kind of makes things just go a little easier, understand a few different nuances of your life, and I really do like that. So that's really what I have to say about the Book of Shadows right now. And like I said again, thanks Jude Direct for getting my mind thinking about those prompts, because the Book of Shadows seems to be something that's easily neglected. I think we spend more time decorating it than we do actually filling the pages with what is worthwhile information in there. I think we just look at pretty books sometimes and or are so intimidated by the book itself about actually putting a word, using your own handwriting in it and everything. And I think sometimes calling it a journal and doing the journal is just an easier, less intimidating thing to do than it is to writing all those pretty books. Because there's some beautiful Book of Shadows out there now, and I just don't see myself doing what I should do with them and giving them proper justice. But that's a shame on me, because I feel like I am creative enough. I am a writer. I am I am going to call myself an artist. I'm no longer going to shortchange myself and think that, well, I'm no artist and I'll just mess it up and it'll just be ugly. Or I can't write anything good, or I might make a mistake and I might have to scratch it out, or I might have to do whatever. Well, you know what? It's okay, because that's what it's there for. It's a record of what you're doing, and if you have to look at it more as a scientific journal and put down cause and effect, or if you're more artistic and you want to put pressed flowers in it, or just beauty of the day, whatever you see, you really need to put it in there, because that's what it is. It's capturing you in your life every day. And that's why I need to really start working on it, because I think we do neglect that a lot. But I'm rambling now. I've been rambling for quite some time, so I am going to end for now. Thanks, and merry part.